Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to another micro brand review. It seems that just about every micro brand worth their salt has decided to release a new model either the last week in May or the first week in June. So I've got another one for you today. It's the latest release by Zelos. Now, I have gone on record before saying that Zelos was, in my opinion anyway, the world's #1 micro brand. They've been around for 11 years now. They have sold tens of thousands of watches, surely, and yet they still operate on a direct-to-market sales model to keep the prices low, which is the very essence of what it means to be a micro brand. Now, it's been a year since I last looked at a Zelos, and it was also a Helmsman. It was their 10th anniversary model, a spectacular limited edition made of 100% unobtainium that sold out within minutes. So as always, if you like what you see, set an alarm. Now, you saw the pop-up. This video is sponsored by Zelos. I will therefore, of course, leave a link to the new Helmsman in the description of the video. There are 6 different dial colours of this new watch, from plain black to mother of pearl to full lume. They go on sale later today. And with Zelos releases, there's usually either 1 or 2 colorways that sell out really, really quickly. The challenge is to pick which ones those will be. Let's flip the camera and do just that. Alright, let's get into it. Zelos have been pretty consistent about their packaging over the years. I think this is only the 3rd different iteration that I've seen anyway, and I have been reviewing them for about 8 of their 11 years now. They started off with a couple of different wooden boxes, and they moved to this 3-watch travel roll a few years ago. Now, this particular one contains 2 watches. Elshan sent me 2 of these for a look. I do have to send one of them back, unfortunately. The black one and the Meteorite one. Also contained in your outer cardboard box, you will find one of these natty little metal warranty cards. Signed and dated, of course, only a 1-year warranty, which will appear in the moans and niggles section, as it always does. Serialized. These are limited runs, I think from 100 up to 200, depending on the colour version. Let's talk then about the colour versions. So there are 6 different Helmsmen being launched later on today, prices ranging from $429 up to $549. I think I'm going to split these into 2 groups of 3 though. Alright, first 3 then: plain black dial, Meteorite dial and full lume dial, what they call frost. I reckon if you're buying your first Zelos, you should probably have a look at one of these 3. If you're buying your 21st Zelos, you've probably got one of each of these 3 in your collection already. Which leaves these 3. They are the tidal dial with that horizontal wave pattern on the left, what they call a crystal tie dial with that spectacular radial blue pattern in the middle, and the one on the right, the orange dial, that's actually mother of pearl. I reckon these 3 are going to be the ones that sell out quickest in this particular batch. I reckon they're arguably the most interesting of the bunch. But I didn't get sent those 3, I got sent these 2, so that's what we will all be looking at today. Pretty much everything I say about these ones applies to all 6 different colour versions. There are some minor differences in the looms, so do check the listing, and like I said, a bit of variation in the price as well. In terms of dimensions and specifications though, they are all the same. So bang on 40mm in diameter, 12.4mm thick with a 46.7mm lug to lug. It actually looks like it's going to be thicker than 12.5. I think that's because the lug to lug is so compact, relatively compact anyway. 20mm between the lugs, tapered down to 18, back up to 21 at the clasp. As sized for me, a heap of spare links by the way. I reckon you're all right up to about an 8.25, even perhaps an 8.5 inch wrist with this one. Slightly heavy, 161 grams. You would normally expect a 40mm diver coming in, made out of stainless steel anyway, coming in a little bit lighter than that at around 150. Box dome sapphire crystal with anti-reflective undercoating, 200 meters of water resistance, movements all the same in all the watches. It's a Miyota 9015. Now, you get quick release spring bars, but you don't get a display case pack. Instead, you get this rather nice oil-pressed ship's wheel. It's the helmsman after all. This has been a feature on all of the helmsman case backs up to this point. Usual spec sheet advertising the Meteorite movement, the 200 meters of water resistance, and the fact that this one is limited. This is piece number 67 of 200. Like I said, it's somewhere between 100 and 200 of each of the different color versions. You know the Meteorite, 24 jewel, hacking and hand winding, Japanese auto. The only complaint I ever have about the movement is occasionally you get rotor wobble and rotor spin. None of that here because it's a big chunky case with a big chunky case back. And it is a very nicely finished case as well. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Christopher Ward Lightcatcher case, at least in terms of the proportions and the downturn in those lugs. But the Helmsman case has got one thing that the Lightcatcher does not. It's got this big grooved, scalloped cutout on both of the sides with a sandblasted, kind of bead blasted center section again, making it the third different finish. So high polished sides, it's got a circular brush to the upper lug surfaces, and it's got that bead blasted side section. Fixed bezel, high polish on the side and brush on the upper surface, and two crowns, both Zelos branded. The crowns are 6.5mm each, both nicely grippy. The bottom one operates the movement, the top one operates the internal bezel. And it's a good high quality bracelet on all of these Helmsmen as well. It's a proper 7-link bracelet. They're all separate links. They're not just single links masquerading as a more complex entity. Fully brushed upper surface with a high polished chamfer on each of the two edges, matching the high polished chamfer running lug to lug on the case. I already spoke about the quick release end links. This one comes with an on the fly adjustable clasp, although it doesn't at first glance look like it. Doesn't have that signature kind of push in there. Instead, what you do is you push the Zelos logo. Now, I have seen this many times before, but it's a little bit different on the Zelos because the push button is not where you'd expect it to be. It's towards the bottom of the clasp, not towards the top, in line with the two opening pushers. Alright, dial in hands, and I will drop in plenty of macro footage of both dials here as appropriate. The layout's the same, but just the colours are a little bit different, so I'm going to start with the black one. Everything's applied, so indices are applied, as are those numerals at the 12 and the 6. Zelos logo also applied above the pinion. Date frame just printed on, as is the model name, in this case in orange, beneath the pinion. There's a printed minute track around the outer edge of the main dial surface, and then there is a step up to that inner rotating dive time bezel. So as noted, if you want to operate that internal rotating dive time bezel, you unscrew the crown at 2 o'clock, the top crown, and you can then roll the bezel back and forth bidirectional, and it's just friction. So no problems, therefore, getting it lined up exactly where you want it. In terms of the internal bezel itself, it is fully graded, so every single minute is on there, which is great, and they have gone to extra pains to delineate the first 15 minutes, and it's all fully loomed, as you'll see in just a second. In terms of the hands, they are skeletonized, the main hour and minute hand, but they're skeletonized lengthways, not something you see very often. This is now at least the third or fourth iteration of the Helmsman over the last 11 years or so now. These have been a bit of a signature carryover from previous versions. They look almost Art Deco when you look at them in isolation, but don't give quite the same effect when you're viewing them from arm's length. Oh, and it's a high polished second hand with bright orange arrowhead tip picking out the orange dial text perfectly. Now, in terms of the Meteorite one, everything I just said applies, but with a bit more Meteorite and a bit more blue. Zelos were the first brand that I encountered doing Meteorite dials. They certainly were the first doing Meteorite bezel inserts. I believe they were the first in the world to do Meteorite bezel inserts. And this is a trend that we have seen start in the microspace and go all the way up to Rolex, who launched their first Meteorite dial watch only a couple of years ago. Great to see Zelos still doing it. And I think the blue colour they've chosen for the hands and the indices on this one goes perfectly with that grey Meteorite. It's a little bit more expensive, it's $550 as opposed to $430 for the black one, but the premium you are paying is for the material. It is bloody expensive, let me assure you of that. Alright then, Lume. Both of these watches feature exactly the same lume, but this is the black one just for your reference. Two-tone lume again has long been a Zelos signature. They mix in BGW9 and C3 superluminovas at various points on the dial, including that fully lumed internal rotating bezel. When I turn the speed up though, yeah, it's okay this one. Not as good as some other Zelos models that I have looked at in the past. You can still get a good read on the dial at the end of the test, but I would have loved to see a little bit more lume throughout, perhaps. You do get lumed crowns though, which is always nice, but yeah, a bit more on the dial wouldn't have gone amiss. Alright then, on to the wrist shots. I have a 7-inch wrist for your reference, and this 40-20 style of dive watch is pretty much exactly what my 7-inch wrist likes to wear. As noted, this one a little heavier than I might have expected, coming in at 160 rather than 150 grams, but very, very comfortable. No sharp or rough edges on the case. The fact that the two crowns are off at slight angles, meaning you don't get it digging in. You don't get a 3 o'clock crown potentially digging into the back of your wrist either, and it is a very comfortable bracelet. And there you are, that's the black one. Oddly enough, it is exactly the same look and feel as the Meteorite version. Perhaps some of the extra few grams comes from that thick case back, so perhaps a bit of a trade-off there, a bit more weight, but you do get some noise dampening to help you with the Miyota rotor wobble. And overhead legibility is actually pretty good as well, especially considering it's not the biggest watch in the world. Then you have that fixed bezel, then the inner rotating bezel, meaning it's not the biggest dial or handset in the world either. But they do a good job. Alright, moans and niggles then, and I only really have two. Zelos know what they're doing, they make a really solid offering, they've refined their designs, they've refined their output continuously over the last decade or more now, and they haven't price gouged. The fact that you can still get this one for $430, that includes shipping. They're shipping these in about 4 weeks' time, by the way. That is excellent. That is why so many people just love this brand. If I am going to complain though, I'm going to complain not for the first time about the clasp. That is just so weird, having the logo at the bottom rather than the top. When you've got it on wrist, you feel like it's backwards. You feel like you've got the whole bracelet is on backwards. I'm sure you would get used to that, but if you're wearing it as part of a rotation with other watches with similar bracelet and clasp arrangements, maybe you won't. And I reckon it's a mil too wide. I always have a bit of a dig at watches that have the width of their clasp wider than the lug width. Really, this should be 20 max. So 20 down to 18, back up to 20 max, but it is quite thick. Perhaps they could have done with an extra mil or two of taper, therefore, and that would have allowed a slightly smaller clasp. It's not that long, but it's just a little bit girthy. Now, earlier on, I praised Zelos for not altering their sales model. They still sell direct to market, enabling them to still offer these watches at great prices, but the limited drop thing, I know, does work against them occasionally. There tends to be a bit of a scramble at the very minute that these watches go on sale, and if you don't get the hot one that you've been eyeing up for the last couple of weeks, there tends to be a little bit of salt on the forums and on their Facebook group afterwards. You know, it is tough for small brands, even ones as successful as Zelos, to try and manage stock levels and cash flows, and having limited releases does tend to heighten their desirability, but inevitably some people miss out and aren't always happy about it. Oh, and before I forget, 1 year limited warranty. It should be 2. But apart from that, you really cannot knock these watches for value for money or for build quality. They tick every single box that you would expect a micro diver at this price point to tick, and a few more besides. So there you have it. Whether it's your first Zelos or your 21st Zelos, there's a lot to like about this helmsman. It's a neat and tidy all-rounder, and the fact that you can still buy one for under $450 delivered is testament to Zelos sticking to their first principles and sticking to their sales model. If you want to have a look at a couple of my favorite Zelos models, including the one on my wrist today, click here or here. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.